Hello again, and welcome to the Soccer Media Podcast, special holiday bookshelf edition of the show. Heidi Smith has written a book titled Play On, From Adversity to Advantage Through 140 Years of Women's Soccer, and she's going to join us coming up here in just a minute. We are presented by Soccer America, the gold standard of American soccer journalism for more than 50 years. You can find them at socceramerica.com. And for a free trial of Soccer America, go to socceramerica.com/free trial. We are produced by the John Shrader Media Group, and you can find us at schradermedia.com. Again, our chat with Heidi Smith is coming right up. Thanks for being here. Heidi Smith is the author of Play On, From Adversity to Advantage Through 140 Years of Women's Soccer, former coach, educator, writer, and now author, first-time book author, and she's been kind enough to spend some time with us to talk about this project. Heidi, thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, John.
Okay, so let's just start where we usually start these things. I just said first-time author. Now you know what it is to write a book. What was the genesis? Why did you sit down one day, and I guess it was a number of years ago, and said, you know what, I'm going to put my life and my blood and my heart and my soul into this project for years? Why?
Well, it really starts, I start the introduction with this moment in my boyfriend's kitchen during the 2015 Women's World Cup. And that American Woman ad came on from Nike. And it just really was portraying women's soccer players in a way I had never seen before. And it just kind of hit something in me. It was portraying them as really powerful, athletic, and just unapologetically aggressive. And it sounds ridiculous, but it made me cry because it was just nailing something in my own experience that I had never seen on screen in just how women's soccer has been depicted. And I thought, wow, if I feel this way coming from a background of 21 years as a player and 3 years as a coach, I bet there are a lot of other women out there who feel the same way. And I just think that there's something about this game that really goes beyond the sport. And I wanted to explore what that was. And so just getting into that question, I had an idea that women's soccer has the ability to change the world, but I didn't know how or why exactly. And following where that idea took me, took 9 years and a lot of research and a lot of interviews, but ultimately culminated in this book.
When you started chasing people down, and I mean that as nicely, we all do this, but you really do. It's a phone call, then a phone call, then another phone call. Do you know this person? Hey, do you know her? Do you know that person? Right? I mean, we know how this process works of writing. What was the reaction? How, did it quickly, immediately resonate with the people that you wanted to talk with?
It did, and that was really encouraging. The first person that I spoke with actually was Mary Harvey, who was the former goalkeeper for the U.S. Women's National Team in the 1991 World Cup, currently the executive director of the Center for Sport and Human Rights. And sadly, her story didn't even make it into the book, but she talked with me for 90 minutes. She just gave me so many leads on who I really needed to talk to. She gave me background I had no idea about. When I contacted Aaron Heifetz of the U.S. Women's National Team to hopefully speak with Jill Ellis, he got back to me really quickly, which I was surprised about, and just said, Jill likes your questions. I thought, all right, I'm doing something right. Oh. And from there, yeah, it just kept going. It was sort of like a relay race. The baton kept getting handed off, and I would get introductions to new people. And yeah, it sounds like you're very familiar with how that goes.
Well, yeah, I'm in the middle of a project now, and I've interviewed probably 6 people, and I really could probably interview more. How many folks do you estimated? Maybe you know exactly how many people you talked with.
Somewhere between 25 and 30. And again, not all of them made it into the book. So maybe there's fodder for more in the future.
Yeah, and you nicely did say early on, I think might have been in the forward, I'm sorry I couldn't put everybody in, including Ali Wagner and a couple of others that we talked with. I suppose you probably emailed them or called them and said, I thank you very much, but sorry I couldn't get it in my 200 pages. Did you contact them?
I have not, and now I feel bad.
Oh no,
I really
I'm sorry.
should.
I'm sorry.
I think it had been so long because this was such a lengthy process. By the time I had finished it, it had been maybe, I think in Ali Wagner's case, it had been 6 years since I spoke with her, and so I just kind of thought maybe she forgot about it. But I will do that.
I'm sorry.
That's a great idea.
You did mention her name in the book, so I feel safe at least in that. So I'm going to talk a little bit how it's structured, because it's interesting how you've structured it, how you've titled the chapters, but it's also personal. There are also, and in every chapter, it's like kind of, this is what it means to me, and this is sort of the genesis of this, and this is where my heart and soul comes in this. How did you decide to do that, and how did you sort of craft that into the whole narrative?
Yeah, so it was really two things. One, just in terms of the structure, once I started getting into this, there was so much information, and I don't know to what degree, and forgive my background. We're in the middle of the Pacific Northwest is flooding, and it's been a crazy 48 hours. So I haven't cleaned up my background as well as possible. But if you behind me, you're going to see just there's a lot of women's soccer books back there, and there was just this massive information between the interviews and everything I was listening to and reading, and it was overwhelming. And I thought, how can I put this together in a way that isn't just incredibly daunting for people to read? And then I started really thinking about what I was learning and how that fit, and landed on this structure of the advantage rule and just using the fouls from the women's game itself, or the game itself, to showcase this history. And once I identified that, it was like, okay, I think this works, and I won't be able to include everything, but I will be able to include an awful lot of things. And so that was what I went with. And so every chapter does focus on a foul of some kind, with examples of women playing on, women or teams. Yeah. And then the personal side was just, I knew that I had some experience with all of these things myself, and that not everyone, in fact, most people, especially my age, did not make it to the national team. We didn't really end up on a pro team or a semi-pro team. And to some extent, this book is also for them. And so I wanted to put some experiences in there that were relatable, that were not kind of that elite level, but just, this is what it was like being a player and a coach in the 80s and the 90s, and how that went.
Yeah. You mentioned that you played soccer for 21 years. Is that what you said? Not many people play soccer for 21 years. You just kept plugging away at it, huh?
Yeah, I mean, in the end, it was not really too organized. I think it was organized through college, although I was a redshirt in college, so don't get too excited about that. But and then I had some playing time on clubs in Hawaii, and again as a redshirt on the Hawaii state team back in 1991. And then after that, I was really coaching and just playing pickup games, and really informally, until I was 27.
Yeah, great. So the chapters are titled, and I'm just going to read these very quickly. Dangerous play, obstruction, delay of game. Anybody who knows anything about soccer recognize all of these, right? Taunting is not a rule, but it is an action. Added injury time, field of play violation, own goals, out of bounds, unsporting conduct. So give me an idea of how you sort of broke it down to those, because you probably had 3 dozen other choices of terms that you could have picked.
Right. Yeah. So some of them were really obvious, and some of them were less so. Obstruction really lent itself very nicely to the history of football bans in both England and Brazil. And then the game was actually illegal in the Netherlands. The women's game was illegal in the Netherlands, in Germany, and places that might surprise people. So obstruction seemed like a good fit for just that history. Taunting, as you mentioned, is not actually a rule per se. It's more of something we would associate with the NFL, I guess. But I was really looking for a way to frame media coverage of the women's game, both historically and currently. And that was what I came up with. Unsporting Conduct, looking at the definition of that, that really seemed like a good fit for the equal pay, just that whole struggle. So those are just a few examples. Field of play violation, again, a little bit of a stretch, but that was really about equipment and playing conditions, and how those, just the lack of equity with those across the board, whether we're talking about in the US or in Nigeria or wherever.
Yeah. Anybody who spent any time reading about it, thinking about it, researching, or just knows that the story of women in sports is a story of women and their desire to be included. And we're not talking about 10 years, 20 years. We're not talking about 100 years ago. We're talking about hundreds of years, right? And that feeling sort of runs as a thread through this book. And if you would sort of confirm that notion for me, and then how did you make sure that that was the case?
I think so. If we're talking about, say, the 1880s in England, women just wanted to be able to play, and so there were really two attempts to form leagues and just be included, as you're saying, in the game. And they really were shut down initially. It's in the dangerous play section, which is really about violence against women in the sport. You had 5,000 men show up to one of those first games and rush the field and just not allow the game to go on. And so you had women just running. I would like to think it wasn't for their lives, but I can't guarantee that. Just they had to get out of there for their own safety. So they were very intentionally not included in the game early on. And then later, you have women in Brazil and in Mexico wanting to be included again. And in that case, you've got the media really mocking them and ridiculing the idea that they even could participate, or coming up with ideas that just some really ludicrous ideas, that maybe it would damage them medically, that women's soccer was dangerous, that maybe it would affect your fertility, that women who played possibly were prostitutes, just all these things just to keep women out of the game. And that has really been a thread, but they've always found a way to keep playing.
You talk about, and I'm going to talk about a few things particularly, but I'm interested in the work you did about the Iranian women soccer players, excuse me, and the drive, the desire, the threats, the risk, the deaths of women who just wanted to come in and watch a football match. That was it. Can you share a little bit about that story with us?
Yeah, and really full credit for all of that goes to Shima Oliai. She has a podcast called Pink Card, and I began with that and listened to all of her episodes and then did some further research. But in Iran, women really love to play football, soccer, and attend games up until the government was overthrown in the late 70s. And with the new basically theocracy that came in, women were banned. They were banned from playing. They were banned from stadiums, but many of them would find workarounds. And so they were sneaking into stadiums in various ways. They were dressing up as men. And if they were caught, the consequences were really severe. So if they were caught just as women trying to get into a stadium, there were often beatings. They were jailed. Some really young girls were sent to one of the worst prisons, the worst prison in the country, just for trying to watch a game, where they house political prisoners and some of the worst criminals in the country. So and that's right up until 2019. And that's when, really tragically, one of those fans was caught dressing up. Sadar Sahafi, I'm hoping I'm getting her name right because I haven't looked at it in a moment, but she was caught dressing up as a boy to attend her favorite team's game and sent to prison. And then she, just for, I think, 6 weeks, and then she was going to be sentenced to a longer period. And she basically committed suicide by lighting herself on fire on the courthouse steps. And that got the world's attention. It got FIFA's attention to a degree. It got the Iranian men's team's attention. And so at that point, FIFA made some greater effort than they had to get the Iranian Football Federation to allow women into stadiums, which they did, sort of. They had to be in their own section, and it was just a small percentage of them, and women are saying things haven't really changed there. So this is an ongoing situation.
If I'm FIFA, I'm not really proud of the role that I played in this entire scenario. Is that fair?
Yes, that is absolutely fair.
Yeah, I mean, they got in late and then didn't do much. That's a very brief way to put it, but I think apt, right?
Yeah, I think they were trying to cover their bases after the fact, to just make up for the fact that they really had not used the tools at their disposal in terms of their anti-discrimination policy. They hadn't enforced it in Iran. They also are not enforcing it with the Afghan women's national team, and they could. So they have some work they could be doing.
Yeah, you could kick them out of the association if you wanted to, but they haven't, have they?
They have not.
And they have not. Heidi Smith is the author of Play On, From Adversity to Advantage Through 140 Years of Women's Soccer. It is published by Sunheart Productions, and it's available, I suspect, wherever you get books, right? Just find it, right?
Yes, and the audiobook will be coming out in about 5 days.
Awesome. Did you voice it?
Yes.
All right, cool. Couple of other things that struck me. I did not know that there was a 1971 Women's World Cup game in Women's World Cup in Mexico City. Wow. I know a film has been made about that, but give us an idea of what that was all about.
So that came, there was actually a Women's World Cup in Italy, an unofficial, unsanctioned by FIFA Women's World Cup in Italy the year before. And the organizers were excited about the idea of bringing it to Mexico when they basically floated that to FIFA and the Mexican Football Federation. FIFA said, absolutely not. And the Mexican Football Federation said, you can't use any of our fields. And so the organizers basically went to some fields, two of the biggest fields in the country that were outside of the jurisdiction of the Mexican Football Federation. And they put on this event, which was hugely successful by any standard, just thousands of people coming to games. They had I think more than 110,000 people at the final, which was between Denmark and Mexico. And it seemed like this was going to be the moment that women's soccer absolutely took off globally. But it wasn't televised. It wasn't really promoted after the fact or covered after the fact, other than a bit in the home countries of these teams. And then it just fell completely off the map, to the extent that, like the 99ers, Brandi Chastain is one of the producers on the film Copa 71 that was made about this. She had never heard of it. I'd never heard of it. And many of us just had absolutely no idea, that have been involved in the soccer community for decades. So, yeah.
And again, sadly, the first official sanctioned FIFA Women's World Cup was in China in 1991. 1991. So that gives you an idea of how long this struggle has been and how recently it took that turn. And that's, look at it historically. That's not cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And at the time, they didn't even call it the Women's World Cup. They called it, and I'm going to butcher this name, but it was something like the Women's World Championship for the M&M's Cup, because they were just afraid of tainting their brand. So they wanted to just have a little an out with the name.
Well, there's a lot of history of that too. The Football Association, the FA in England, banned women's soccer, effectively banned it for what, half a century or so, starting in the early 1920s, right?
Yes. Yep. They really wanted to get rid of the women's game, in part because it was competing with the men's game. So you had all of these servicemen returning from World War I. In the meantime, really starting around 1918, women's leagues started to flourish. You had, with Dick Kerr's ladies were the dominant team of that era. And they had at one point 53,000 people attend a game, with another, I believe it was 6,000 people waiting outside. So they were celebrities in their day. It's another era that really kind of went underground, that people completely forgot about for a long time, that has only recently resurfaced. But the FA made a pretty concerted effort to get rid of the game. And the way they did it was through banning use of their fields. So that worked. They also talked with people in rugby leagues and cricket leagues and said, you can't let the women use your fields either. And that pretty much effectively wiped things out for 50 years.
Well, and it's not just soccer. When basketball was invented back at the last part of the 19th century, it became popular among women, and almost everywhere it was banned. It was banned in colleges and universities at the first part of the 20th century, just because women were not supposed to play sports. And then, of course, they made up, as you've alluded, ridiculous notions that it wasn't good for your health. It's not good for child rearing women. I mean, go down the whole list of reasons why you've been told that women aren't supposed to play sports. And sadly, it's a 20, even into the 21st century, it remains an issue. And maybe, and I don't want to make you uncomfortable to speak to this, but you talked about dangerous play, and we've talked about some of the things around women's sports, but sexual abuse, sexual harassment on social media. I mean, there's a laundry list of things that women suffer in sport that men do not, right?
Yeah, well, and I think that
maybe
really became...
Yeah, maybe not as much, but yeah.
Yeah, I think that there is violence certainly in the men's game, but it is a bit different in the women's game, and particularly when you're talking about sexual abuse. And when we had the whole NWSL scandal that broke in 2021, 22, one of the real issues there was that this was the third attempt at a women's league, and the two other leagues had failed. And like Meg Linehan really talks about this in her reporting, that players, and I mean everyone, but particularly players, were afraid to speak up about anything that might show the league in a bad light, including abusive behavior that was happening within their teams or to them specifically, because they didn't want the league to fail. And so dealing with that kind of pressure while also dealing with abuse that's a tough situation. And fortunately, it all really came to light and has driven significant change. But it is, I mean, that Sally Yates report just said it's systemic, going down to youth leagues. And so that's something that really has needed to change and hopefully is changing.
In this book, Heidi, what are you hoping to say to share with, to converse with young or any women, girls and women, and maybe even men? I know that's two different questions or not, but you're speaking to men as well. But what do you hope to say to girls and women?
A couple of things. I think we're in this incredible moment for women's sports. We're in this incredible moment for women's soccer, and it's absolutely worth celebrating. And at the same time, it's important to know how we got here, and the way that, well, just that we got here because of so many of these women who just loved the game and kept going. And I hope that people find that inspiring. I also think that so many of these women, and you just hear it over and over again in all these women's soccer podcasts that so many players are producing now, people really are talking about wanting to leave the game better than they found it, and that's something that they really hope that each successive generation takes with them and really takes on. So I hope that that also is an effect of this book. For men, I think if you care about women, there's a lot of stuff in here about just some of the differences with coaching men and coaching women, and some of the things just in terms of hormone cycles and their effect on everything from ACL injuries to recovery and severity of traumatic brain injuries to just depression and anxiety, and just kind of what's going on in this critical window of time between about 12 years old and whenever menopause happens. And I think if you're a man who cares about women, who has daughters, who's a coach, this is good information to have. And I've talked with several male coaches so already who just say, wow, I didn't know this and I'm definitely going to apply it. So I hope that it's useful.
Great, great. In this process, this years-long process from the genesis of the idea, the germ, to the publishing of it in 2025, what have you learned about yourself that might have been revealing, or it might have made you think about this? You understand the question?
Yeah. I found this process, it was very healing in a way, because there were things about my own journey with the game that I never fully understood. And I think I hadn't really forgiven myself for not making it further as a player. And just understanding some of the things about coaching, and then some of the things about women and self-criticism, and how we can get in our own way in ways that are very detrimental if you're trying to play at an elite level. That was really helpful to me to understand. Yeah, and I think that I did end up feeling very connected to all of these women all over the world and over time that have played this, because there's just sort of this common love of the game and collaborative spirit that carries through. So that last part is not exactly answering your question, but that was what I found.
No, I get that. I appreciate it. And again, the book is Play On: From Adversity to Advantage Through 140 Years. And on the screen here, I'm putting the book up here for people to see it. Again, the title, Play On: From Adversity to Advantage Through 140 Years of Women's Soccer. The author is Heidi Smith. The publisher is Sunheart Productions. And I hope folks can find it, and maybe they can still grab one and stick it in a stocking somewhere for Christmas. And congratulations. I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's been fun. I've enjoyed it. I'm most of the way through the book, but I promise you I will get all the way through the book. But I think people will find it interesting. And again, you can hear it soon, apparently. So there you go. So Heidi, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thanks again to Heidi Smith, who's an author, a writer, a coach, a longtime soccer player, and the book is Play On: From Adversity to Advantage Through 140 Years of Women's Soccer. It is published by Sunheart Productions. We are presented by Soccer America, the gold standard of American soccer journalism for more than 50 years, and we're produced by the John Shrader Media Group. And we hope you can join us next time. Some of our guests recently, John Strong from Fox Soccer, also JP Dellacamera. We've had Andres Cantor, Taylor Twellman, and much more on this venture, the Soccer Media Podcast. And we thank you so much for being here. We hope you can like us, subscribe, pass it along, leave us a comment, whatever it is, because we enjoy doing it. And we'd like you to take a look. So thanks. Again, I'm John Shrader, and hope to see you next time.